Hey everybody, thank you so very much for participating in the 2022 Spring Iowa Youth Straw Poll. I am former Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer, and I'm so excited to be chatting with you today and telling you that I am running for United States Senate because Iowa, our country, and democracy are worth fighting for. I grew up in Iowa in a small town a little bit north of Dubuque called Sherrill. As I like to say, it's got more cows than people. And my dad was a union pipe fitter welder. My mom was a secretary for the school district. And I learned at a really young age growing up here in Iowa that if you work hard, you should be able to make it. That is what we were told, and that is what we were promised. Unfortunately, I started seeing a lot of those promises being broken over the years because of some of the policies that we saw being pushed both in the state house and in Congress. It's why at the age of 24, I ran for the state house in Iowa, and I stood up and I fought back against the attacks on working families like the one that I grew up in, and also attacks on our education system, on our environment, you name it. And I knew that there was more work to do. So at the age of 28, I ran for the U.S. House of Representatives. And there I became the youngest woman in history to flip a seat from red to blue and got to work right away. Actually, within the first 2 weeks, I passed a bill with a Republican colleague of mine. So it became bipartisan, and it was about creating opportunities in our small towns that are all too often overlooked. This became the theme of my 2 years in Congress, of how do you create more opportunities in Iowa? How do you bring Iowans back home? And how do you make sure that we have opportunities here for our young people to be able to stay? This again has been the theme of why I ran for office in the first place. And now I am running for United States Senate because, folks, we have a heck of a lot more work to do. And quite frankly, 47 years in Washington, D.C. is just too dang long for anybody. So while I was in Congress, I also saw that there were a lot of folks that were sitting there who'd been there for decades and quite frankly have forgotten about why they're there in the first place and who they represent. It's why I support term limits and making sure that we can have more folks from Iowa who understand how we grew up, what we value, and being there and actually fighting for us in the way that we deserve. I actually not just support term limits, but I want to make sure that you know that I have no desire to serve more than 2 terms in the United States Senate to make sure that we can get the job done and we can bring in the next generation after us. It would mean the world to have your support here. We'll keep working hard because, again, Iowa, our country, and democracy and your future are worth fighting for. Thanks, folks.